Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. This is Freedom Monday again, and we are so glad that you are here. You are watching on Synergy TV. We are on Caribbean Showtime TV in Canada. We are also on U97.5 FM radio, and we welcome you to Freedom Monday. We start with the quote of the day by Fab India Expo. So take a look and listen. Do not judge me by my success. Judge me by how many times I fell down and got back up again. Something important to reflect on. And we are fortunate to have Fab India Expo share that with us. I'll read it one more time. Do not judge me by my success. Judge me by how many times I fell down and got back up. The main thing is no matter how many times you fall, you get back up. Thank you very much, Fab Expo, for that. And we go to the ads now. Thank you very much. My guest again, you would remember we had him last week, Professor Hamid Ghani, and we had a really wonderful conversation. We spoke about local government and its aftermath and some of the things that might happen, both with local government and central government. We talked about the party system, two-party and then multi-party. We talked about the relationship between central government and local government. We talked about the relationship between central government and the House of Assembly. We talked about why the electorate was virtually packed up and not making a choice, and then we got to the issues really having to do with the imperatives for constitutional reform, which Professor Ghani said there was not an appetite for because it was not an urgent matter in people's consciousness. But we are going to be talking about some other things now. That issue might come up again in the conversation, because when we started the conversation last week, we didn't know where it would end up, and that's what happens when you have knowledgeable people engaged in serious issues and they start to talk, because you never know where ultimately it's going to lead, because you are thinking on your feet. But today, I want to start with the press conference that the Prime Minister had some weeks ago. After the cabinet retreat, you would remember, we had the local government elections. Some time passed. We have the budget coming up. We have the economy in some crunch, certainly, and possibly a crisis. And therefore, the Prime Minister called a retreat. He said that the cabinet has been meeting virtually for the last year and a half, and this was one of the ways in which the cabinet could come together, person to person, and trash out a few things. And he talked a little bit about what they talked about, but not a lot, really. And I want to ask Professor Ghani, I want to start by asking him, were you satisfied that the Prime Minister kind of leveled with us on the basis of the cabinet retreat? Did he share enough with us?
Well, I think he shared what he wanted to share, and I think what people were expecting was a cabinet reshuffle. That would have been the disappointment that there was none. So he has taken his own political risk, that he is going to stick with the team that he has, and that regardless of public opinion, and he tried to cast it in a social media context, but it is much more than social media. There is a fair amount of public opinion out there that is suggesting that, you know, people want to see some kind of change take place or something being done more aggressively. And I think that was one of the subliminal messages of the local government elections, and may also explain why so many PNM supporters stayed at home. So that I don't know that he really went as far as people would have liked, but he has made his own political calculation and he's now gambling. He's gambling that the current set of ministers in their current portfolios will be able to deliver going into another year. The budget is due sometime before the 31st of October. It has to be approved. So traditionally it falls in the first week of October, and all of the processes and so on in the House and then in the Senate take place before the 31st of October, when it is approved, and then you have allocations, the authority to spend money for the coming year. What policy changes are going to be announced in the budget, we don't know. It was significant, however, given the recent challenges in August with Caribbean Airlines, that he said that did not come up on the agenda at all. And I was shocked to hear that Caribbean Airlines did not come up on the agenda, seeing that the government is an 89% shareholder in Caribbean Airlines.
Yeah. I mean, I think maybe they focused on what they might have seen as the big issues. And the two big issues would have been certainly the violent crime, which he mentions. Although I personally, I mean, I looked at the press conference. I wasn't satisfied with what he had to say about crime. I mean, it's one thing to say that you have good relations with the United States and you're trying to stem the flow of guns from the United States, and you now have federal authority to deal with people who want to ship guns from the United States. But really, that doesn't solve the problem here. I mean, it will help, it will make a difference, and it's good that they are doing it, and I don't want to make light of the initiatives of the government, because I think they made significant headway. But I really think that I mean, on the crime front here, unless you deal with the gangs, unless you deal with the corruption and protection that makes it possible for gangs to function, unless you deal with the drugs and the guns here in Trinidad and Tobago. I saw someone with a gun on his chest, when I say so, on a t-shirt, and I asked him, I said, why are you wearing that? And he told me that, well, because there are guns everywhere. And I was a little taken aback. I was dismayed, actually, because the guy was quite young. And, so it's a problem, and I understand the issue of stemming the flow from the United States, but we've got to do some things here, and the question is that why can't we do something institutionally with the institutions that we have to deal with that problem? And the second issue that we have is the issue that he hinted at but did not go into too much detail about. He talked about the fact that we were going to have less of a resource base now, meaning that the gas production was going down significantly, and therefore it's going to have implications for revenues and what we could do. So I imagine they spent most of their time trying to deal with those things, given the fact that crime is urgent and abundant, and given the fact that you have a budget coming up. But, I mean, as I said, I wasn't satisfied with what he had to say about crime. And he talked about the fact that they were going to have a spotlight on the economy, but he didn't say that much about the economy either. I mean, do you think that the Prime Minister should have maybe shared some more with us, or maybe he could give us an idea of what the government's thinking is about how they are going to deal with this? We don't want their strategy for dealing with crime, because we don't want to tell everybody. And I imagine in the budget they will begin to outline some of the policy shifts, if they want to make policy shifts, to cause a recovery and to facilitate growth under conditions of extreme loss of revenue. But, I mean, I don't think anybody was satisfied with his response.
Well, I think that, he he confessed, and there was a level of exasperation in his voice about how we are such a violent society.
Yeah.
And I think that if we start there, it will take us to the education system and what's going on in schools. We've seen enough to see and know that school children are extremely violent, and we have seen this over and over. What is going on in our schools? Because that is where the violence is coming from. They leave school with that violent mindset. And when we see the kind of violence that is going on with school children in uniform, you add 5, 10 years onto them and the young adults outside there, and we understand the connection between the violent society that we have and what is going on in our schools. And I think that that is something that needs further attention. And the issue of how have we become such a violent society, those are questions that were being asked by the late Dr. Morgan Jobe in the 1990s when he had radio programs on, and he used to ask these questions. Why are we becoming such a violent society? What is going on? And there were many who wanted to shut down Dr. Morgan Jobe for talking
angry at him, yes.
They were angry at him, but he had foreseen what was happening in this society, and he talked about it, and he paid a price. There were people who attempted to stop advertising on his show, to shut him down and so on. But he was on to this, and the reality is that 25 years later, the society is far more violent than it was back in the 1990s when Dr. Jobe was talking about it. So I think that we need to understand the source of the violence. One of the sources is the school system. And we're not talking about dropouts. We're talking about children in school wearing uniforms and going to classes and engaging in this extreme violent behavior, beating up one another. And now we see it. Social media has allowed us to see all of this, but you get it reported in the traditional press that they are talking about how these school children are so violent. We need to make the connection between that violence and the violence in the society, because they all do grow up and they all leave school. So that the young man wearing the jersey that you spoke about with the gun, the glamour that brings to them, there is very little compass for them to be able to process something. The availability of guns, where is that coming from? We hear all kinds of talk, and they go back to OPVs and all of these other things. Those are just talking points that evade what is the core issue of where is all of this coming from. The United States is playing a very aggressive role and has perhaps ramped up its role in the region, which is a laudable thing for us, but we still have a responsibility on the ground.
Yes,
foreign allies is one thing, but the reality on the ground is another, and I think we have to wake up and understand that the school system is an area where we need to go and look at what is happening in our schools.
Are we doing enough on the ground?
I don't think so.
Okay, because, I mean, let's face it, you have gangs, right? These gangs, I mean, the gangsters are known by name. The only time you hear the name of a gangster is when one is shot.
When one is shot. But the gangsters have considerable organizational skills.
Yes, of course.
They have skills that they've obviously acquired from somewhere, but they know how to run an enterprise. It may not be the kind of enterprise that you want to promote, but they have skills, they have organizational skills, and they're able to run enterprises that are highly profitable, and the way in which they organize their business is that they have a business model. And therefore, we're not talking about illiterate people. We're talking about people who have a modicum of intelligence and are able to run operations in a profitable manner, and they treat it as a business.
Well, they have a lot of smarts, because so far they have been beating the system. Mm-hmm. You know, whether it is in prison, whether it's in the street, whether it's the police, whether it's the legal system, they've been beating the system. So they have a lot of smarts. But we'll come back to that, and we now take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back. Please stay with us.
Are you ready to own your own home? But worried about time, money, and construction? We handle it all. With Docs, you can sleep in your dream. Make a down payment of $100K or $150K and we'll build a 2 or 3 bedroom home on your unused land. A home is an investment into your future, so let's help you invest wise, invest well. Payment plans available. We're only a call away.
Lifetime Solutions, manufacturer of metal roofing, panels, framing, guttering, and related products. Located lot number 26, Omera Industrial Estate in Arima. Give us a call, 646-5813 for further information. Lifetime Solutions. Give us a call today.
It's savings and big discounts when you shop at Fens nationwide. Upgrade your home or treat yourself to something special. Enjoy store-wide savings on furniture, appliances, electronics, bedroom, and so much more when you shop at Fens of Marbella, Chaguanas, Pinal, and Piaco. Visit us in-store for more information or call 650-FENS, that's 650-3367, or check us out on Facebook, Fens of Trinidad and Tobago, serving generations.
India in Style Expo has declared its final extension. Located just behind KFC next to Fun Station La Romaine, will definitely be closing on Monday 2nd October. South Trinidad, shop for Ganesh Utsav, Navratri and Diwali. Enjoy delicious vegetarian Indian food. India in Style Expo, located behind KFC next to Fun Station La Romaine from 11 AM to 9 PM. We're also open on weekends.
Bollywood Garba Night at the Mid-Center Mall Dome on the 14th of October. Garba, Bollywood Music and Dance Festival. Best 3 dances win big. Tickets for flat $100 starts 7 p.m. until late. Mark the date, Sunday 14th October, first time ever in Trinidad. Bollywood Garba Night on the 14th of October at the Mid-Center Mall Dome.
Super quality supermarket. Best quality and great prices. Get your fresh fruits, vegetables and meats. It's a one-stop shop for the most affordable groceries, baby items, kitchen supplies, bathroom accessories, car care supplies, pet food, toys and lots more, all at Super Quality Supermarket. Wide aisles, fully air-conditioned and secured parking. 3 locations nationwide: Couva Car Park, Couva, 98 Endeavour Road, Chaguanas, and 47 Tissue Drive, Trincity. Super Quality Supermarket.
Welcome to OATS, Optimal Alternative Treatment Solutions Limited, the future of healthcare, which provides full body scans, which we detect and treat cancer, tumors, all heart conditions, cysts, fibroids, dementia, Parkinson's, just to name a few. No radiation and medication is not needed. If you are tired of getting no results, call us at 354-4459 or 356-7226.
Thank you very much for staying with us. This is Freedom Monday on 97.5 FM radio, Synergy TV, and Caribbean Showtime TV Canada. Thank you for staying with us, and we're talking with Professor Hamid Ghani this morning, and my name is Bo Tiwari. Professor Ghani, you were talking just now about the school system and what's happening to young people. I mean, this country every year we have about 16 to 20,000 babies. So the intake in the school system is about that per year. And you have these young people who go to school until the age of about 17 or 18, not more than that. Some of them come out at 15, some of them at 16. Half of them, though, 50% of them, I'm being loose with the figures, but the figures are accurate generally. 50% of them get no passes in the CXC system. So these people, 50%, like 10,000 children, really, they cannot enter the economic system, really. Secondly, unless they do some kind of catch-up or rehabilitation or take some course of action that would allow them to continue in the system, they do not have access to educational opportunity. So you take a 15 or 16-year-old with no option in the economic system, badly educated in the school system, no certification to show, unable to continue in the secondary school system. A lot of those, well, I shouldn't say a lot, but certainly some percentage of those are potential recruits for the gangs in this country. And some of them would be, prone to become wayward in the way that things happen. And it's going to be very hard, 10,000 every year, over 10 years, that is 100,000. It's going to be very hard to manage 100,000 youngsters like that with nothing to do, nowhere to go, if we don't have some kind of system that would address what essentially is a societal and educational problem. Huh?
Yeah, well, what you've identified there is the potential ground for recruits that organized crime will tap into to be able to get their recruits. And once, of course, their material needs are being satisfied, then they go deeper and deeper into it. It is a high-risk life. It is a life without any certainty with regard to future. But in terms of short-term gain and short-term satisfaction of material needs, it addresses some of the needs of those persons. I think deeper than that is the issue of remedial education and what efforts are being made with regard to remedial education, because there is a need for that kind of remedial education to take place to give people hope. But there must be a link between education and opportunity. And the question with regard to opportunity is another challenge that obviously that is going to manifest itself. Because people are unemployed doesn't mean they have a criminal mind.
Yes.
And I think that's a faulty assumption that many people do make, that because if unemployment goes up, the criminal rate will go up. It's not necessarily so. People don't necessarily...
There's no direct correlation.
And they don't have a criminal mind, but they become potential recruits for organized crime.
That's right.
And when you dangle dollars and you dangle a way of life and a sustainability, then they get deeper and deeper into it.
Yes.
And that's it. But the issue of organized crime in Trinidad and Tobago was first identified in the Scott Drug Report.
Yes, of course.
And we saw from the Scott Drug Report where organized crime was now establishing itself and so on. And then the report itself was explosive. This is why it was kept under wraps. And the manner in which it was leaked into the public domain, a leak appearing at Ricky Singh in Barbados, outside the jurisdiction of Trinidad and Tobago after there was a change of government in 1986. So in 1987 it came out. So we saw what was in the Scott Drug Report. But it detailed a link between organized crime and a number of the official processes of the state. And I think that is where we got an insight into this connection between them, because they were actually interviewing people and getting insights. That phenomenon has grown. It has grown exponentially, and that the external influences into our society are such that you have all of these persons you just spoke about who drop out of school, have no prospects and so on. They are the prime source from which organized crime can recruit those that it needs to keep the gang culture going and various other activities. Of course, I'm talking without the benefit of any intelligence briefing or confidential briefing as well, just looking on the outside at what is going on, listening to people who ought to be or have been knowledgeable about the issue, and public pronouncements on the subject matter, and you get the impression that there is an organized element to all of this. And what is it that makes Trinidad and Tobago attractive? For years you've heard about the transshipment point and all of that to North America and Europe and all of that, but it continues. It continues. There are weaknesses in the system that allows it to continue, and therefore, this problem may persist for some time to come. How do we deal with this? Having the U.S. as an ally is useful, I'm sure that the EU and the British government and others and so on have an interest in what is going on here because they don't want it ending up in their societies, but it does. It comes through here. But there's a whole chain. It's a global network, so really, to go further into it without an intelligence briefing or background would take us perhaps into areas that we'd be uninformed about.
Yes.
But I think that I'll just try to paint the picture in a broad general sense, and that it is far more complex than we might imagine.
Do you think, it is clear that the problem has escalated. It has become worse. It is more organized. They have one up on the authorities, the criminals, It is also becoming more dangerous. You have home invasions. That's the other thing the Prime Minister did not mention, these home invasions. I don't know what could be more horrible than somebody coming in your house and basically, taking charge of your household and manhandling you and so on. But do you think that any government, is capable of dealing with this problem at all? Or do you think that there are political elements of this problem that make it difficult for governments to deal with it? And do you think that the police service as currently structured, organized in the way that it is to manage crime, do you think that they have the wherewithal to deal with it?
I think that the police service is severely challenged in dealing with the situation. There have been public expressions or public confessions that there are some rogue elements inside the police service. So we know that is part of this problem. The Prime Minister did not address the issue of home invasions, and I didn't expect that he would go in places where he is weak. He has a very good command of communications, and when he handles press conferences, excuse me, and there are some reporters who don't take him on or take him into places where he would be uncomfortable. So to some extent, there's an element of friendly fire. They'll ask him certain questions and so on, but he manages to get away because some of the harder questions are not asked. And when the harder questions are asked, you see he visibly changes in the way he responds. He becomes angry and he pushes back hard, so that you can tell when he has a very soft press conference, powder puff type press conference, questions that are being asked that really, don't really test him. But it's something I think that needs to be considered, but he's very good at handling those press conferences because he takes charge of the agenda.
Yeah, I thought that the home invasion issue cannot really be avoided. Anyway, we take a break now. Let's see what the ads have to tell us about what is important to you. Thank you for being with us, and stay with us when we come back.
Are you ready to own your own home? But worried about time, money, and construction? We handle it all. With Docs, you can sleep in your dream. Make a down payment of $100K or $150K and we'll build a 2 or 3 bedroom home on your unused land. A home is an investment into your future, so let's help you invest wise, invest well. Payment plans available. We're only a call away.
Lifetime Solutions, manufacturer of metal roofing, panels, framing, guttering, and related products. Located lot number 26, Omera Industrial Estate in Arima. Give us a call, 646-5813 for further information. Lifetime Solutions. Give us a call today.
It's savings and big discounts when you shop at Fens nationwide. Upgrade your home or treat yourself to something special. Enjoy store-wide savings on furniture, appliances, electronics, bedroom, and so much more when you shop at Fens of Marbella, Chaguanas, Pinal, and Piaco. Visit us in store for more information or call 650 FENS, that's 650-3367. Or check us out on Facebook, FENS of Trinidad and Tobago, serving generations.
Looking for an adventure? Then come to Massa Nature Park. There are scenic spaces for picnics, adults and kids swimming pools, apartments for rent, huts for cooking, liming, and beautiful nature trails for hikes. Business hours 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. daily. Conveniently located at Brasso, Grand Couva. Contact us at 777-4531 or 335-0183. Let the fun begin. Tile Expression Limited, the #1 leader in tiles. Large stock, unbeatable prices, wide variety of porcelain tiles, ceramic tiles, wall and floor tiles, residential and commercial, granite and quartz countertops. Best quality from Spain, Italy, Brazil, India and China. Tile Expression Limited, conveniently located Monroe Road, Kunapir. Telephone 693-0015 or 223-TILE.
Have you been diagnosed with stroke, Parkinson's disease, dementia or migraine headaches? Do you have weakness of your feet, hands or face? Are you having trouble with your memory? Do you keep forgetting where you place your keys? Do your hands shake? Are your muscles stiff? Do you have bad headaches? Then the solution is Synapse Medical Services Limited. The consultant physician at Synapse Medical Services is a UK-trained specialist in internal medicine with Canadian training in general neurology and stroke neurology. To book an appointment now, WhatsApp 367-9368. That is 367-9368 and be on your way to a speedy recovery.
Thank you for staying with us. This is Freedom Monday on U97.5 FM radio and Synergy TV and Caribbean Showtime TV in Canada. Our sponsors are Docs Engineering, Works Limited, Lifetime Solutions, and FENS of Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you for watching. Thank you for staying with us. My guest is Professor Hamid Ghani of the University of the West Indies, a political scientist, and we are discussing the Prime Minister's press conference a couple of weeks ago based on the cabinet retreat. And we are talking, of course, politics and governance as well. Thank you for staying with us. I am Bo Tiwari. Now, let's shift gears a little bit. The Prime Minister said, well, first of all, he outlined that we had a resource problem. To make a long story short, that resource problem was that we had reduced production of natural gas. And he said that we were only going to be about producing about 70% or 30% less than what we needed. So we would have a problem, and that problem would show itself in revenue, it would show itself in foreign exchange, and so on. And he said the government would have a spotlight on the economy. Now, they had a spotlight on energy some years ago, and we are in this energy mess right now. All of it is not the government's making. Some of it are just the vagaries of investment, incentives, and price. But here we are now, we have spotlight on the economy, and we're showing a spotlight on the economy when things are bad and where you have to make some hard decisions. I don't know what decisions are going to be made. Do you think the spotlight of the economy on the economy will be useful, and what will it be useful for and to whom will it be useful? I ask those questions because I want to get behind the thinking behind having the spotlight on the economy.
I think the spotlight on the economy, the way they're going to do it is after the budget. And therefore, it's going to be more to try and sell the budget proposals that will be put
You think it's going
forward.
to be after the budget?
I think it'll be after the budget. I'm not sensing, well, we're into the middle of September, latter part of September, so we the press conference was, a couple of weeks ago. So that I think from that point of view, I suspect it's going to be after the budget. And that will be the occasion to be able to have discussions on budgetary proposals. But the energy thing, he spoke about the Dragon deal, the cross-border gas deal with Venezuela, for which the United States has granted permission for 2 years to be able to engage Venezuela. And he talked about it as trying to push a stone up a hill.
Yeah.
And that tells me that there is a lot that is going on. And the United States is in a position to be able to obviously gain some concessions in terms of what is going to be done. 2 years is a relatively short period of time to be able to conclude a successful negotiation with Venezuela to exploit the cross-border gas. And I think from that point of view, there is obviously something very difficult behind the scenes with regard to this. Then he raised the issue of the Petrotrin refinery and its closure, and he talked about there was an imminent check for 850 million US that would have had to have been written, and the country could not afford that, and we were defaulted, and all of that conversation. And I was surprised that no reporter raised with him the issue that at an earlier time he had given an undertaking on a political platform that the Petrotrin refinery was not going to be closed. And the way he couched it, he said, for those of you who went to the fridge and slammed the fridge door and didn't hear what I said, I repeat, the Petrotrin refinery is not going to be closed. So he was emphatic at one time. And then yesterday he spoke about this. And no reporter challenged him on that political statement he made on a platform about if you went to the fridge and you slammed the door and you didn't hear, let me tell you again, we are not closing the Petrotrin refinery. So I think that, as I maintain, he has an ability to take control of a press conference, and the reporters treat it more like friendly fire that he can handle, and he does not get the tough, hard questions, because that's when his whole body language changes and his whole persona changes. He's an effective communicator. He knows how to control a press conference, and in many respects, I think he's able to get away with it.
I was surprised that he went to Petrotrin at all.
Well, you see, I think he cast it in the context of potential default, and that's where he went. But if the reporters had tackled him, they would have gone back to an earlier time before the closure, when he said it on a public platform that if you went to the fridge and you slammed the door and you didn't hear, I'm saying it again, we're not closing Petrotrin.
Yeah, this, I mean, the real problem that the energy sector imposes on the economy of Trinidad and Tobago is the fact that now that you have this loss of revenue, you are going to inevitably have a bigger deficit. And it means that you have to address the question of expenditure, both the amount that you can spend and the pattern of expenditure. He raised yesterday the issue of capital expenditure because you need to create jobs and so on. And that is the other thing, there is no real recovery in the economy because you are moving the economy from a loss of 15% of GDP. You are getting a 3% here for 1 quarter, etc. And you're really not recovering, you're just catching up. You're trying to catch up, and it's going to take you a long time to catch up. And the real challenge for the economy is where, now that you have this shortfall of revenue from the natural gas and related sectors, how are you going to pick up that shortfall? What is it that you're going to sell to the world to pick up that shortfall? And secondly, where are you going to get the foreign exchange? that you need, because you are losing not just revenue, you're losing foreign exchange. And that puts the country in a very, very difficult position. And that is why I was surprised that he said that we would go to spotlight for the economy, on the economy, rather than to address some of the issues here before the budget. I mean, and I would be dismayed if he had spotlight on the economy after the budget, because what he should do is to actually spotlight the economy so that what they do in the budget makes sense in the context of what you are saying, rather than come after the fact.
But he was asked about certain specific budgetary issues, and he said he would defer to the Minister of Finance. But the one thing that he did say is that we're going to run a deficit budget again this year.
Yeah, it has to.
So he confessed to a deficit budget. He didn't defer that to the Minister of Finance.
Avoid it.
Right? But it means that the expenditure patterns are still there. The issue of subsidies, transfers and subsidies, remains a thorny issue.
Yeah.
And that is where a bulk of this expenditure is going, to try and keep the cost of living down. And he talked about fuel, and he was asked about the cost of fuel and so on. And he said, well, we're going to look at the figures and so on. But he basically navigated his way through all of that without any hard questions being asked.
Yeah,
and he was not put on the spot, and he was able to ride through the press conference, because I don't know whether it is that, you know, the reporters are just not thinking about the things to ask, or whether they're intimidated, or what is it? What is it? I don't know.
Are you saying that the press is weak, though?
I don't sense from some of the questions that are asked that they're really probing to what is the core of some of the key issues. And, I don't want to say, because I know some of them, they get a chance to ask a question and somebody else is asking a question. They don't get a chance to come back again. So they have to try and ask the one question that they may get to ask, and they're lucky if they get a second or a third one, unless they obtrude themselves into an interrupt to try to get it. I don't know what his reaction is when reporters ask hard questions, if there's any blowback for reporters and so on. All of this is something that we don't know. But the reality is that he has been able to control the press conferences. I looked at him all through the COVID situation, right? And he was able to control these press conferences that he was having. And if there's anything he did not like, he would be able to push back hard on reporters and so on. And you would not get a cut and thrust. Much like, when I looked at press conferences that took place, for example, in the when Donald Trump was in office, the way the media would take him on and he would take them on. We don't get that kind of engagement at all.
You don't get a combative
media engagement
with the media.
Yeah.
Anyway, we've got to take a break now, but we'll be right back, and we want you to stay with us.
Are you ready to own your own home? But worried about time, money, and construction? We handle it all. With Docs, you can sleep in your dream. Make a down payment of $100K or $150K and we'll build a 2 or 3 bedroom home on your unused land. A home is an investment into your future, so let's help you invest wise, invest well. Payment plans available. We're only a call away.
Lifetime Solutions, manufacturer of metal roofing, panels, framing, guttering, and related products. Located lot number 26, Omera Industrial Estate in Arima. Give us a call, 646-5813 for further information. Lifetime Solutions. Give us a call today.
It's savings and big discounts when you shop at Fens nationwide. Upgrade your home or treat yourself to something special. Enjoy store-wide savings on furniture, appliances, electronics, bedroom, and so much more when you shop at Fens of Marbella, Chaguanas, Pinal, and Piaco. Visit us in-store for more information or call 650-FENS, that's 650-3367. Or check us out on Facebook, Fens of Trinidad and Tobago, serving generations.
India in Style Expo has declared its final extension. Located just behind KFC next to Fun Station La Romaine, will definitely be closing on Monday 2nd October. South Trinidad, jump for Ganesh Utsav, Navratri and Diwali. Enjoy delicious vegetarian Indian food. India in Style Expo, located behind KFC next to Fun Station La Romaine from 11 a.m. to 9 p.m. We're also open on weekends.
Bollywood Garba Night at the Mid-Center Mall Dome on the 14th of October. Garba, Bollywood Music and Dance Festival. Best 3 dances win big. Tickets for flat $100 starts 7 p.m. until late. Mark the date, Sunday 14th October, first time ever in Trinidad. Bollywood Garba Night on the 14th of October at the Mid-Center Mall Dome.
Passage to Asia, the award-winning restaurant and banquet suite located in the heart of Chaguanas, the best fusion food restaurant in Trinidad and Tobago. From the second you enter to the moment you leave, you will be treated like royalty. Come, dine in luxury and enjoy the finest combination of Asian cuisine prepared by skilled and qualified chefs at Passage to Asia. The experience is truly unforgettable, perfect for families, couples, and large groups. Passage to Asia, located at St. Ives Street, Chaguanas. Contact 672-2701. Also, visit us on Facebook and Instagram.
Welcome back, and thank you very, very much for staying with us. We are coming to you on 97.5, Synergy TV, and all over Canada and the Caribbean. Thank you very much for listening and watching. Now, do you think that we are going to have a meeting of minds across the aisle on, first of all, legislation to deal with violent crime and other legislation that might be important to the best interests of the country between government and opposition in this term?
I hardly think so. I don't see the prospect for it. They may have a meeting. It'll be good optics to have such a meeting. But I think the PNM has its own ideas and really doesn't want to be seen as taking advice from the UNC. The president made this call to put aside partisan differences and reach across the aisle and so on. It's a noble cause, right? And a very nice thing for her to say, but it's unrealistic. You know, Parliament operates on the basis essentially that the opposition will have its say and the government must have its way. And that's the end of the story. So in our system of government, this business about collaboration and so on, the only time that it gets enforced is when there is special majority legislation, like a bill requires a 3/5 majority and so on, which the PNM does not have in the House of Representatives, which they're able perhaps to negotiate with the independent bench to get in the Senate. But in the House of Representatives, they haven't been able to get it unless they concede to the government. And of course, that's a whole PR game that has to be played before that happens. But notwithstanding all of that, the opposition has supported the government on at least 23 pieces of legislation between 2015 and 2023 to date. So that the call for collaboration is something that has happened already. That collaboration is ongoing, but the public most probably don't get that impression, because what they get on the news is a 30-second soundbite of shouting in Parliament at one another, and you extract that from a longer debate. And you have created this image that parliamentarians are nothing more than a bunch of warmongers shouting at each other and saying things, when in fact a lot of serious work is going on, but it's boring television to look at and does not make the newscast salacious enough to capture attention. So the president went out of her way to paint this image of parliamentarians doing all of this work and use her own anecdotal experiences and so on to point out certain things and so on, which was fine and which was a good place for her to go. But I think that the necessity for doing that is that people have come to form an opinion about parliamentarians that they're into shouting and saying things against each other and so on, which is perhaps in the heat of crosstalk, but that is not the cut and thrust of everyday parliamentary life. And so it's good that she went there, but the reason why she had to go there is because the media has created an image of parliamentarians as being nothing more than arguing with one another and foul mouths with one another. So it was a different thing.
So
that was
you don't think you don't think that there is a problem of too much partisan divisiveness and too what can I say, too much open combat in the parliamentary arena over issues?
There is a lot of partisan divisiveness and there is open combat over issues. The call for across the aisle meeting and so on will be good optics. What will come out of it, for example, the opposition is calling for stand your ground legislation. The PNM is opposed to that. So it's very difficult to get a kind of middle ground on stand your ground. It's either you stand your ground or you don't stand your ground. So right now we don't have stand your ground legislation. They're fundamentally divided on that issue. Reaching across the aisle, the only way I see that something can happen is, you know, if the opposition publishes the bill that it would like to bring to Parliament, but oppositions can't bring bills to Parliament like that and have them go through, especially when governments don't want it. So the government, the cabinet controls the agenda. They control when Parliament is going to sit, they control when it's going to meet, they control all of those things, the timetable, which bills are going forward today, whatever. All of that is determined. The leader of government business is the one who will carry out those directives from the cabinet and what they would want to have done on the days when government business is paramount. The cabinet has the ability also to even to direct the leader of government business to have adjournments that might miss days when it is going set out in the standing orders that is private members' day, and you may be able to get around it and all kinds of things. So there are many techniques available. So it has to be a two-sided approach because all of these techniques exist. But essentially the executive controls the legislature in our system of government. So really and truly it is more for the government to make concessions to the opposition and the opposition to come begging for arms and ask for a little chance to have a meeting and so on and we get together. Because the system requires divisiveness.
Do we need a separation of the executive and the legislature in the process of constitutional reform? Would that work for the country?
That is where this would have to go. And that kind of separation between legislature and executive will open up the doors to power sharing, which then unleashes in the society different forces who want to be able to come forward as third and fourth parties. That's how they will get to sit at the table. The current arrangement will not allow them to sit at the table. They may get 100,000 votes. The ONR in 1981 got 90,000 votes, no seats. And in that particular context, what is going to happen is that you have a powerful third force, but their value is vote splitting. In this local government election, you saw some of the smaller parties splitting votes in some of the areas where they were contesting against each other, because the NTA and UNC avoided each other. But some of the other parties were splitting votes, which made the difference. You get a 81 here, you get a 64 there, or whatever it is, and then you have parties that are in a dead heat, or something. It's the split vote that makes the difference. So that our system of government can thrive for those who are in power to have the split vote phenomenon of third parties. And as long as there is no systemic change, you don't have to have constitutional change to have electoral change. You can have electoral change and leave the constitutional arrangements as they are, because coalitions have worked before. I mean, A.N.R. Robinson did it. He did it in 1995. There was a coalition, and Pandey and others were able to add to the coalition by poaching PNM members and so on. And then by 2000, the UNC was able to win a majority in its own right. And then in 2001, everything fell apart. I mean, the golden age of the UNC was between 1991 and 2001. That was the golden age of the UNC. After that, they went into coalition mode by 2010, because in 2007, a big chunk of the UNC broke away and went with the COP and got 148,000 votes no seats. Again, proving the
Yes,
point that
yes.
third parties do not work in the current electoral system. So you could have electoral reform without having constitutional reform. The only change that would have to happen is one section in the Constitution where you'll just have to change the word that the first past the post election and put in the other type of election, and which is what happened in 2014 when it was going to, you were putting in the runoff system, and the House and Senate agreed to it, but the Senate amendments were never ratified and the government went out of office in June of 2015. That would have been the only change to the electoral system if there was a runoff, but I sense that, again, powerful interests behind the scene didn't want that, and it lapsed, so that we're stuck with this electoral system.
So you can have a change of the electoral system that introduces a proportional representation.
Or some other electoral system, or whatever.
And that would change the composition of the legislature.
Right, which will then force the executive to have different, you don't have to do anything else, you can just change the legislature.
Well, so you change the legislature, and that would force the executive, so to speak, to deal with what is essentially a multi-party system in the legislature.
Well, you can have a coalition arrangement if the legislature is changed by just changing the electoral system. That is the key. In the United Kingdom, you had a coalition government between 2010 and 2015.
Of course.
The Conservatives and the Liberal Democrats.
Yes.
And it was a coalition that went the full 5 years. Power sharing, and they make compromises on policy and so on. Because in Parliament, nobody had a majority.
Yeah.
But and that's a first past the post system. You know, so you have a situation in which we don't need to get into the whole architectural overhaul. You just change that electoral system, and the potential for a different kind of membership of the legislature arises, and you can effect the changes you're talking about by leaving the rest of the edifice intact, because you're going to force a coalition that you saw in 1995 that worked. In 2010, there was a coalition, but it was an oversized coalition. The UNC had a 21 or 41, so they had a majority in their own right. But they honored the commitment to have a coalition, so they brought in 6 COP members, and they brought in 2 top members, so you had 29 that made up, but they had 21 in their own right. So they could have formed a government without the others, but they decided to have an oversized coalition and power sharing. So you can still do it. So the example of 2010 with an oversized coalition, the example of 1995 with a 17-17-2, with 17 and 2 giving you 19 out of 36 coalition. So you could take the coalition that gives you a majority, or take the coalition where one party has a majority and it adds to it by bringing in other voices in the society. So you can do it. So to my mind, all of this electoral, all of this constitutional reform issue, if you start with the electoral system, you start to change the whole process. Because once the legislature, one party doesn't have a majority in the legislature, you have a new political dynamic.
Well, you could change, I mean, what you're talking about really is to change the politics.
By the electoral system.
By the electoral system, and change the politics of parliament and the politics between the executive and the parliamentary system. But to really have an executive that focuses on governance and a legislature that focuses on legislation and representation, you need constitutional change. You would need, I think you
ultimately,
need All right, we've got to close the show, but Professor Ghani, I want to thank you again for coming out 2 days in a row to speak about matters of politics, governance, government, and society. And I'm sure that the listeners and viewers enjoyed very much these conversations. I want to thank you for listening, for paying attention, for viewing. This is Freedom Monday, happens every Monday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and we repeat at 3 p.m. on Synergy TV and U97.5. Thank you very, very much for watching. And my name is Bo Tiwari. See you next week.